I am Elena, 38 years old, and my husband just told a room full of people that my life's work was actually his achievement, right before demanding $7 million he didn't earn. Before I tell you how a single manila envelope made a superior court judge burst into uncontrollable laughter, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. The air conditioning in the San Francisco Superior Court was set to a temperature I could only describe as morgue preservation. Or maybe it was just my blood running cold. I sat at the mahogany plaintiff's table, my hands folded so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had turned the color of parchment. Across the aisle, leaning back in his chair with the casual arrogance of a man watching a football game in his own living room, was Marcus. My husband. Or rather, the man I was currently paying $400 an hour to legally surgically remove from my life. He looked impeccable. He was wearing the charcoal Armani suit I had bought him for our second anniversary, the one he said made him look like a titan of industry. He was whispering something to his lawyer, a man named Sterling who had a smile that reminded me of a shark sensing blood in the water. They were laughing. Actually laughing. Judge Harrison, a man with bushy gray eyebrows and a reputation for having zero patience for courtroom theatrics, looked over his spectacles. He shuffled the mountain of paperwork in front of him. "Mr. Blackwood," the judge said, his voice gravelly. "Your final statement regarding the division of assets?" Marcus stood up. He buttoned his jacket with a flourish. He didn't look at the judge, he looked at the gallery behind me, then he looked at me. His eyes, once the warm hazel pools I used to get lost in, were now flat and hard, like polished stones. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice smooth, practiced. It was his boardroom voice. "I am not asking for anything unreasonable. California is a community property state. The law is clear. But beyond the law, there is the reality of our marriage." He paused for effect. He was always good at the dramatic pause. "My wife, Elena, is a brilliant coder. I've always said that. She can write algorithms in her sleep. But algorithms don't pay the mortgage. Algorithms don't manage a portfolio. I sacrificed my own career on Wall Street to manage the finances of Lumina Tech. I built the structure. I handled the investments. I made sure her little project became a $15 million empire." My lawyer, Sarah, stiffened beside me. I felt her leg brush against mine under the table, a silent signal to remain calm. But my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Marcus continued, a smirk playing on his lips. "Without my financial guidance, Elena would still be coding in a garage. I was the brain behind the bank account. Therefore, I am entitled to 50% of all marital assets, including her grandmother's estate which was commingled, and 50% of Lumina Tech." He looked directly at me then, and said the words that will stay with me forever. "She provided the labor, Your Honor. I provided the intellect." The audacity hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A few people in the gallery gasped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table. Instead, I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my hands were steady. I picked up the thick, yellow manila envelope that had been sitting in front of me for the last hour. "Your Honor," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "I believe Mr. Blackwood's memory regarding his financial guidance is a bit selective. I have a document here that clarifies exactly how he managed our finances." Marcus rolled his eyes. He actually rolled his eyes at me. I walked to the bench and handed the envelope to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Harrison. "Read page 1, Your Honor," I said softly. The room went silent. The only sound was the rustling of paper as Judge Harrison opened the clasp. He pulled out a stack of spreadsheets and a singular, glossy photograph. He looked at the photo. Then he looked at the spreadsheet. Then he looked at Marcus, who was still smirking, confident in his victory. And then, Judge Harrison did something I had never seen a judge do in my entire career. He snorted. Then he chuckled. And then, he threw his head back and burst into a loud, booming laugh that echoed off the high ceilings of Department 304. To understand why that laughter was the most satisfying sound of my life, you have to understand the silence that came before it. You have to understand the woman I was 3 years ago. I wasn't a shark. I wasn't a warrior. I was a nerd. I was the girl who sat in the back of the library during lunch in high school, rewriting code for her calculator games. I grew up in a small apartment in Oakland. My parents were hardworking immigrants who believed that education was the only ladder out of poverty. They worked double shifts so I could have a computer. When my father passed away during my sophomore year of college, I promised myself I would build something that would make sure my mother never had to scrub another floor in her life. Lumina Tech wasn't just a company, it was my survival. It was an AI-driven logistics platform designed to help small businesses compete with shipping giants. It was unsexy, complicated, and incredibly valuable. When I sold the initial beta version and secured our first round of series of funding, the company was valued at $15 million. I was 35 years old, and for the first time in my life, I could breathe. That was when I met Marcus. We met at a fundraiser for STEM education in the Bay Area. I was standing by the open bar, nursing a sparkling water and looking for an exit strategy. Networking events made me hives-level anxious. "You look like you're plotting an escape route," a deep voice said behind me. I turned around and there he was. Marcus Blackwood. He was tall, with the kind of jawline you see on Cologne billboards and a smile that reached his eyes. He wore a navy suit that fit him perfectly. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "I can see you calculating the velocity required to sprint to the valet stand," he joked. He handed me a napkin. "I'm Marcus. I work in strategic development for a firm downtown. But right now, I'm mostly just bored." We talked for 3 hours. He didn't glaze over when I talked about back-end architecture or supply chain algorithms. He listened. He asked intelligent questions. He told me about his time on Wall Street, about the burnout, about wanting to find something real to build. "I'm tired of moving money around for people who don't appreciate it," he told me over dinner a week later. "I want to support something tangible. Someone with vision." He looked at me when he said vision, and I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. We married 11 months later. It was a whirlwind. My friends, mostly other tech introverts, were charmed by him. He was the social lubricant our group needed. He organized the dinner parties, he picked the wines, he remembered everyone's birthdays. "You got lucky, Elena," my best friend Sarah told me at the wedding reception. Sarah was a divorce attorney, cynical by nature, but even she was won over. "He adores you. And he's got his own career, so he won't be threatened by your success." That was the key. Or so I thought. Marcus seemed proud of me. When Lumina hit the front page of TechCrunch, he framed the article and hung it in our hallway. To my genius wife, he toasted that night, opening a bottle of Dom Perignon. "The world is finally seeing what I see every day." A few months into our marriage, the topic of finances came up. I was drowning in work, managing a team of 50 engineers, dealing with investors, putting out fires. I was neglecting the personal side of things. My tax returns were late, my investment accounts were sitting in cash, losing value to inflation. One night, I was at the kitchen island, surrounded by receipts, rubbing my temples. Marcus walked in, massaged my shoulders, and kissed the top of my head. "Babe, why are you doing this to yourself?" he asked softly. "You're the CEO. You shouldn't be worrying about tax brackets and municipal bonds." "I don't trust anyone else to do it," I sighed. "My dad always said, if you don't watch your money, it walks away." "Elena," he said, turning my chair to face him. "I spent 10 years at Goldman Sachs. This is what I do. Let me handle the household portfolio. Let me handle the personal investments. You focus on Lumina. You focus on changing the world. Let me be your support system. We're a team, remember? I looked at him. I saw his earnestness. I saw a husband who wanted to take a burden off my shoulders. I didn't see a predator. I saw a partner. Okay, I said. You're right. I'm drowning. The next day, we went to the bank. I added his name to my personal checking accounts. I gave him power of attorney over my investment portfolio so he could execute trades without needing my signature every time. This is just for efficiency, he said as I signed the papers. I'll give you a monthly briefing. Full transparency. For the first year, it was perfect. The monthly briefings were detailed. Color-coded spreadsheets showing our net worth growing. He moved my conservative savings into high-yield aggressive funds. The numbers went up. See, he grinned, pointing at a graph showing a 12% return. I told you I'm good at this. You're amazing, I said, kissing him. I felt safe. I felt taken care of. I didn't realize that while he was building our portfolio, he was also building a cage. The first sign of trouble wasn't financial. It was behavioral. But it was so subtle, like a temperature change you don't notice until you're shivering. It started with the we. At dinner parties, he stopped saying, Elena built this company. He started saying, we decided to pivot the strategy in Q3. Or, we are thinking about an IPO next year. I remember sitting at a dinner with potential investors. One of them asked me a technical question about our server load capacity. Before I could answer, Marcus cut in. We actually optimized the cloud infrastructure last month to handle a 300% surge, he said smoothly. He wasn't wrong about the surge, but he had nothing to do with the optimization. He didn't know a server from a toaster. But the investors nodded, impressed by his confidence. Later, in the car, I brought it up gently. Marcus, I appreciate you jumping in, but technical questions should probably come to me. It looks better for the CEO to answer. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. Just for a second. I was just trying to help, Elena, he said, his voice tight. I didn't want you to stumble. You looked tired. I wasn't stumbling, I said. Okay. Sorry for trying to support my wife, he snapped. I guess I should just sit there and look pretty while you take all the credit. That's not what I meant, forget it, he said. I'm just tired. He didn't speak to me for the rest of the drive. That night, he slept with his back to me. The next morning, he was charming again, bringing me coffee in bed as if nothing happened. I told myself he was just stressed. I told myself I was being too sensitive about my territory. But then came the spending. It started small. Designer suits. Expensive watches. A membership at an exclusive country club that cost $50,000 just to join. Networking, he told me. I need to look the part if I'm going to bring in big investors for you, Elena. You wear hoodies. One of us needs to wear Tom Ford. It stung, but I let it go. We had the money. Why fight over clothes? Then, he bought the Porsche. I came home one Tuesday to find a brand new, slate gray Porsche 911 Turbo S in the driveway. It was a $200,000 car. Surprise, he yelled, leaning against the hood. Marcus, I said, dropping my laptop bag. We didn't discuss this. I used the dividends from the tech ETF I picked, he said, waving a hand dismissively. It's practically free money. Plus, the resale value on these is incredible. It's an investment, babe. An investment is something that gains value, not something you drive to the golf course, I said, irritated. Why do you always have to be such a buzzkill? He groaned. You have millions in the bank. Why are you acting like we're still poor immigrants in Oakland? That hit me hard. He knew my insecurities about money. He knew my fear of losing it all. I'm not acting poor, I said quietly. I'm acting responsible. You're acting controlling, he countered. You say you trust me to manage the money, but the second I buy something nice for myself, you freak out. Do you trust me or not? That was his favorite weapon. Do you trust me? Of course I trust you, I lied. Because deep down, in the pit of my stomach, a tiny voice was starting to whisper, don't. The unraveling didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened on a Tuesday night in November, 2 years into our marriage. I was supposed to be in Seattle for a 3-day conference with Amazon. I had packed my bag, kissed Marcus goodbye, and taken an Uber to SFO. But when I got to the gate, the flight was delayed, then cancelled due to a massive storm system in the Pacific Northwest. There were no flights out until the next morning. I called Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. He's probably at the gym, I thought. Or maybe he's already asleep. I decided not to wait at the airport. I wanted my own bed. I wanted to surprise him. Maybe we could order takeout and watch a movie, something we hadn't done in months. I took an Uber back home. The house in Pacific Heights was dark when I arrived, except for a faint blue glow coming from the living room. I unlocked the front door quietly, not wanting to wake him if he was napping on the couch. I walked down the hallway, my heels clicking softly on the hardwood. Marcus? I whispered. No answer. I walked into the living room. The TV was off. The blue glow was coming from his iPad Pro, which was sitting on the coffee table, propped up on its stand. Marcus wasn't there. I frowned. Where was he? His car was in the driveway. I walked over to the coffee table to turn off the iPad. As I reached for it, a notification banner dropped down from the top of the screen. It was a text message. Chloe, did she leave yet? I'm waiting outside. My hand froze in midair. Chloe. Chloe Miller was my executive assistant. I had hired her fresh out of college 2 years ago. She was 24, bubbly, efficient, and fiercely loyal. Or so I thought. I had mentored her. I had given her a raise 3 months ago. I treated her like the little sister I never had. Why was my assistant texting my husband at 9 p.m. asking if I had left? My heart started to beat a strange, erratic rhythm against my ribs. Don't be paranoid, I told myself. Maybe it's about work. Maybe she's dropping off documents. But my fingers moved on their own. I knew Marcus's passcode. It was our anniversary date. 1015, I typed it in. The device unlocked. It opened to his iMessage app. The conversation with Chloe was open. I scrolled up. And as I read, the world as I knew it dissolved. The floor fell out from under me. Marcus, don't worry. The cash cow is heading to the airport. We have the house to ourselves for 3 days. Chloe, finally. I'm sick of pretending to be nice to her. She looked at me today like I was her servant. Marcus, just hang in there, baby. 6 more months. That's all I need to vest the rest of the stock options and finalize the transfer to the Shell account. Then we file, I take half, and we are on a beach in Tulum. Chloe, are you sure the structuring is working? What if the auditors catch the payments? Marcus, they won't. I'm keeping everything under $10,000. It's untraceable. She's too busy writing code to look at the bank statements. She trusts me blindly. It's almost pathetic. Pathetic. He called me pathetic. I felt bile rise in my throat. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stop a sob from escaping. I read on. Chloe, I hate that you have to sleep with her. Marcus, I haven't touched her in weeks. I tell her I'm stressed. Don't worry, you're the only one I want. She's just the bank account. I sank to my knees on the rug. The iPad blurred through my tears. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just sex. This was a heist. They were plotting. They had a timeline. 6 more months. Structuring. Shell account. My mind flashed back to every conversation we'd had in the last year. Every time he told me not to worry about money. Every time he asked me to sign a document without reading it. Every time Chloe smiled at me in the office and brought me my latte. They were laughing at me. Every single day. I heard a noise. The sound of a key in the front door lock. I panicked. I couldn't confront him now. I was shaking too hard. If I confronted him now, he would lie. He would gaslight me. He would delete the messages. I needed proof. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I snapped photos of the screen. Scroll. Snap. Scroll. Snap. I took pictures of everything. The texts about the money. The texts about the affair. The texts mocking me. The front door opened. "Babe? Are you home?" It was Marcus's voice. He sounded confused. He must have seen my shoes or my bag. I stood up. I wiped my face aggressively with my sleeve. I couldn't let him see me cry. I turned off the iPad screen. "In here," I called out. My voice sounded hollow, unrecognizable to my own ears. Marcus walked into the living room. He was wearing his gym clothes. He stopped when he saw me. For a split second, I saw fear in his eyes as he glanced at the iPad on the table. "Elena," he said, the mask sliding back into place instantly. "What are you doing here? I thought you were in Seattle." "Flight cancelled," I said. "Storm." He walked over to me, arms open. "Oh, that sucks. But hey, I'm glad you're home." He went to hug me. It took every ounce of willpower I possessed not to vomit. I let him hug me. I smelled his cologne, Santal 33. The same scent I used to love. Now it smelled like deceit. "Why were you crying?" he asked, pulling back and looking at my red eyes. "Just frustration," I lied. "I really needed this conference for the Q4 projections. And I'm exhausted." He smiled. That charming, reassuring smile. "Don't worry about it. Come on, let's get you a glass of wine. You need to relax." He kissed my forehead. As he walked to the kitchen, I looked at his back. I looked at the man I had vowed to love and cherish. And I realized something terrifying. I didn't know him at all. I was married to a stranger who was systematically dismantling my life. I looked at the iPad one last time. 6 months, he had said. No, I thought, a cold rage settling in my chest where my heart used to be. You don't get 6 months. You get war. The next morning, I learned that I was a better actress than I ever gave myself credit for. I woke up before the alarm. Actually, I hadn't slept. I had laid there in the dark, listening to Marcus breathe beside me, my body rigid. Every time he shifted, I flinched. The man sleeping next to me was an enemy combatant. I got up at 5 a.m., showered, and put on my armor, my sharpest blazer, my highest heels. I went downstairs and made coffee. When Marcus came down at 7 a.m., I was sitting at the island, reading the Wall Street Journal on my tablet. "Morning, beautiful," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I didn't pull away. I didn't flinch. I took a sip of my black coffee. "Morning," I said. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," he said, pouring himself a cup. "So, are you going into the office today since the trip is off?" "Yes," I said. "I have a lot of catch-up to do." "Cool. I have a few meetings with the wealth management team today," he said casually. "I might be late for dinner." Wealth management team. That was code for Chloe. Or code for moving my money. "Okay," I said. "Have a good day." I watched him leave. As soon as his Porsche pulled out of the driveway, I collapsed onto the kitchen stool. My hands were shaking again. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person I knew could help me. "Sarah," I said when she answered. "I need you. It's an emergency." "Is it a legal emergency or a Marcus bought another car emergency?" Sarah joked. "He's stealing from me," I said, my voice flat. "And he's sleeping with Chloe. And he's planning to divorce me in 6 months to take half of everything." Silence on the other end. "I'll clear my schedule," Sarah said, her voice instantly shifting to attorney mode. "Be at my office in an hour. Bring everything you have. Bank logins, tax returns, the photos of the texts. Everything." An hour later, I was sitting in Sarah's glass-walled conference room downtown. I showed her the photos of the texts. Sarah looked at them, her jaw tightening. "Structuring," she muttered. "Keeping transfers under $10,000 to avoid triggering a suspicious activity report, SAR, to the IRS. That's a federal crime, Elena. That's not just divorce, that's money laundering." "He thinks I'm stupid," I said. "He called me pathetic." "He's arrogant," Sarah corrected. "And that's going to be his downfall. But we have a problem." "What?" "California is a community property state," Sarah explained, pacing the room. "Anything earned or acquired during the marriage is split 50-50ths. It doesn't matter that you earned it and he sat on the couch. Unless we can prove fraud or breach of fiduciary duty, he is legally entitled to half of Lumina's appreciation during the last 3 years. He's stealing." I slammed my hand on the table. "I have the texts." "Texts are good, but they aren't a bank trail," Sarah said. "We need to prove exactly where the money went. If he moved it to crypto, or offshore shell accounts, finding it could take years. And if we file for divorce today, he'll know we know. He'll hide the rest. He'll destroy evidence." "So what do I do?" I asked, tears stinging my eyes. "Do I just wait for him to rob me blind?" Sarah stopped pacing. She looked at me. "No. We trap him. We need a forensic accountant. And we need a private investigator. We need to let him think he's winning until we have the noose around his neck." She slid a business card across the table. "Vance Investigations." "Vance is the best," Sarah said. "He's ex-FBI cybercrimes. If Marcus moved a single cent, Vance will find it." "But Elena." "What?" "You have to go home," Sarah said seriously. "You have to go home and be the loving wife. You cannot let Marcus know that you suspect anything. If he smells smoke, he'll burn the house down. Can you do that? Can you sleep next to him and lie?" I thought about my father. I thought about the nights he worked until his back gave out. I thought about the first line of code I ever wrote. I thought about Marcus calling me a cash cow. I looked at Sarah. "Watch me," I said. Meeting Vance was not what I expected. I expected a noir detective in a trench coat chain-smoking cigarettes. Instead, I met a guy who looked like an IT manager at a startup. He wore a hoodie, jeans, and had 3 monitors set up in a nondescript office in the Mission District. "So," Vance said, clicking away on his keyboard as I explained the situation. "Structuring payments. Classic. Amateur, but effective if the victim isn't looking. Can you find the money?" I asked. "I can find anything," Vance said without looking up. "But I need access." "Does he use a company laptop?" "Yes. A MacBook Pro." "Do you have physical access to it?" "He leaves it in his home office when he showers," I said. Vance handed me a small USB drive. "Plug this in. It takes 30 seconds. It will install a keylogger and a mirror program. It will give me remote access to his keystrokes, his screen, his emails, everything. Even what he deletes." I took the drive. It felt heavy in my hand, like a weapon. "Is this legal?" I asked. Vance looked at me. "Is stealing $2 million from your wife legal?" We're in the gray area, Mrs. Blackwood. We get the info to know where to look, then we use subpoenas to get the legal proof. But first, we need the map. That night, I executed the mission. Marcus was in the shower. I could hear the water running. I slipped into his home office. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he would hear it through the walls. I opened his laptop. He had a password, but I had seen him type it 1,000 times. Golfer 1985. I plugged in the drive. A small terminal window popped up. A progress bar appeared. 10%. 20%. The water stopped running. I froze. 40%. I heard the shower door open. I heard him whistling. 60%. Elena, he called out from the bathroom. Have you seen my blue towel? In the linen closet. I yelled back, hoping my voice didn't shake. 80%. I heard footsteps approaching the bedroom, which connected to the office. 90%. Found it, he yelled. 100%. Complete. I yanked the drive out, closed the laptop, and bolted out of the office just as Marcus walked into the bedroom with a towel around his waist. Hey, he said, drying his hair. What were you doing? Just checking the Wi-Fi router, I said, holding up my phone. Internet was slow downstairs. He bought it. Because why wouldn't he? I was the tech girl. Over the next 2 weeks, Vance went to work. The reports he sent me were devastating. Marcus wasn't just stealing, he was hemorrhaging money. He had set up 3 shell companies. One was supposedly for consulting services. Another for market research. Look at this, Vance told me during a secure video call. He's moving roughly $50,000 a month out of your joint investment accounts into these LLCs. Then, the LLCs are paying out salaries to 2 people. Who? One is him. The other is Chloe Miller. How much? She's getting 10 grand a month. Tax-free, essentially, because they're categorizing it as business expenses. But the smoking gun came a week later. I found the big one, Vance said. He's not waiting 6 months. He's accelerating. What do you mean? I intercepted an email to his Cayman banker. He's trying to liquidate a large portion of the bond portfolio, about $2.3 million. He wants to transfer it to an entity called Lumina Holdings International. It sounds like your company, right? We don't have an international holding company, I said. Exactly. It's a fake entity registered in Nevis. If that money leaves the U.S. jurisdiction, getting it back will be a nightmare. When is he doing it? He scheduled the wire for next Friday. Next Friday. I had 4 days. I called Sarah. We have to move. Now. We can't file yet, Sarah argued. We need to catch him executing the wire. That's the felony. Attempted grand theft. If we stop him now, he'll claim it was a legitimate business strategy he was exploring. So I have to let him try to steal $2 million? Yes, Sarah said. We need to catch his hand in the cookie jar. Not hovering near it. In it. The stress was eating me alive. I lost 5 pounds. I had dark circles under my eyes. Marcus noticed. You look terrible, babe, he said over dinner, poking at his steak. Is the company okay? Just stress, I said. Big deadline. Maybe you should sell, he said casually. Cash out. Let someone else deal with the stress. We could retire. Travel. I'm not selling, I said sharply. He narrowed his eyes. You're being incredibly defensive lately. Is there something you're not telling me? The irony was palpable. I'm just tired, Marcus. Well, fix it, he said cold. You're not exactly fun to be around. I thought I was the one controlling the timeline. I thought I was the spider and he was the fly. I was wrong. On Thursday, one day before the scheduled wire transfer, I was sitting in my office at Lumina. Chloe walked in. She was wearing a new dress, Yves Saint Laurent. Probably bought with my money. "Elena," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "There's a process server here to see you." "A what?" A man walked in behind her. He handed me a thick envelope. "Elena Blackwood?" "Yes." "You've been served." He left. Chloe stood there, watching me, a tiny smirk playing on her lips. "That looks serious," she said. "Do you want me to call Marcus?" "Get out," I whispered. "Excuse me?" "Get out." She shrugged and left, closing the door. I opened the envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner, Marcus Blackwood. Respondent, Elena Blackwood. He had filed first. My hand shook as I read the demands. It was a bloodbath. Division of assets, 50% of Lumina Tech spousal support, requesting $45,000 per month based on marital standard of living and petitioner's sacrifice of career to manage domestic estate. Exclusive use of the Pacific Heights residence. Attorney fees, demand that respondent, me, pay for petitioner's legal counsel. And then, the kicker. Attached was an ex parte order, an emergency order, freezing all marital assets. He had frozen the accounts. My accounts. I tried to log into my bank. Access denied. I tried to check the investment portal. Account locked pending court order. He hadn't just filed for divorce. He had nuked my financial existence. My phone rang. It was Marcus. I stared at the screen. "Hubby, love." I answered. "You got the papers?" he asked. His voice was no longer charming. It was cold, hard, and triumphant. "You filed," I said. "I had to, Elena. You've been unstable. Paranoid. I have to protect our assets from your erratic behavior." "Erratic behavior?" I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You're stealing from me, Marcus." "I'm securing my fair share," he said. "I built you, Elena. And now you're treating me like an employee." "Well, the employee is quitting. And he's taking his severance package." "You won't get away with this," I said. "I already have," he replied. "My lawyer, Michael Sterling? He's the best in the state. He eats tech CEOs for breakfast. Here is the deal, Elena. You settle. You give me the house, $5 million cash, and 20% of the company stock. And I go away. If you fight me, I will drag this out for years. I will depose every employee you have. I will ruin Lumina's reputation. I will paint you as a mentally unstable workaholic who neglected her husband. Investors hate drama, Elena. Your stock will tank." He paused. "Do the math. Paying me off is cheaper than fighting me." I held the phone tight. The fear was gone. Replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. He thought he had trapped me. He thought the freeze order stopped me. But he didn't know about Vance. He didn't know I had the logs of the shell companies. He didn't know I knew about Chloe. "You want a fight, Marcus?" I said quietly. "I want what's mine." "Okay," I said. "See you in court." I hung up. I looked at the divorce papers. Then I looked at the calendar. He filed today to freeze the accounts so I couldn't move money. But he didn't know that I knew about his scheduled wire transfer for tomorrow. If the accounts were frozen, his transfer would fail. Unless. I realized his plan. He was the one who requested the freeze. He probably had an exception carved out for ongoing business expenses, which is how he disguised the transfers to the shell companies. I called Sarah. "He filed," I said. And he froze the accounts. I saw, Sarah said. Sterling is aggressive. He's trying to starve you out. Can he still move the money tomorrow? If he labeled it as an operating expense for the management of the portfolio, maybe. It's risky, but he might try it. Let him, I said. Elena, if that money leaves, no, I cut her off. I have an idea. We let him think he's won. We let him think I'm crushed. I'm going to play dead. What are you planning? Sarah asked nervously. He wants a settlement? I said. I'll draft one. I'll make it look like I'm surrendering. I'll distract him. Distract him from what? From the fact that while he's looking at the big accounts, I said, looking at the report Vance had sent me, he made a mistake on the small ones. What mistake? I looked at the document Vance had flagged. It was the registration for the shell company, the one Chloe had set up. He got arrogant, I whispered to myself. He used a name he thought was funny. Elena? Sarah, I said, a smile finally touching my lips. Get the subpoenas ready. We're not just going to win the divorce. We're going to put him in handcuffs. But first, I added, I have to survive the next 3 months of hell. The 3 months of hell I promised Sarah I would survive? I underestimated them. It wasn't hell. It was a calculated, systematic demolition of my soul. 2 days after Marcus filed for divorce, Chloe didn't just quit. She defected. I walked into the office on a Monday morning, coffee in hand, trying to keep my head high despite the whispers rippling through the bullpen. My engineering team, people I had hired, people I had mentored, stopped talking the moment I entered. They looked down at their screens. I got to my office. It was empty. Chloe's desk outside my door was cleared out. No photos of her cat. No succulent plants. On my desk sat a letter of resignation. Standard boilerplate. Effective immediately. But the real resignation letter wasn't on my desk. It was on the front page of Silicon Valley Daily. My phone buzzed. It was a Google alert. Exclusive, the unraveling of Lumina Tech's CEO. Sources close to Elena Blackwood describe a toxic work environment fueled by paranoia, absenteeism, and erratic behavior. She's not the genius everyone thinks she is, says a former executive assistant. Her husband was the one holding the company together while she spiraled. I felt the blood drain from my face. A former executive assistant. Chloe. She hadn't just left to be with Marcus. She had left to destroy my reputation so that when they took half my company, the stock price would be low enough for them to buy me out completely, or force the board to remove me. It was a pincer movement. Marcus attacked the finances, Chloe attacked the credibility. By noon, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. I sat at the head of the long glass table, facing 5 men and women who held the fate of my company in their hands. Elena, the chairman, a man named Robert who had always supported me, looked grave. We're hearing concerning things. We're hearing that you've missed crucial deadlines. We're hearing about substance abuse. Substance abuse? I almost laughed. I drink sparkling water and espresso, Robert. The affidavit from your husband's legal filing suggests otherwise, Robert said, sliding a document across the table. He claims he's seeking spousal support because your alcohol dependency forced him to take over operational duties. I looked at the document. It was a lie so bold it was breathtaking. Marcus, the man who finished a bottle of Cabernet every night, was painting me as the drunk. It's a lie, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. It's a divorce strategy. He's trying to devalue the company so he can leverage a settlement. We believe you, Elena, Robert said, though his eyes said he wasn't sure. But the investors are spooked. The stock is down 8% this morning. We need you to take a leave of absence. A leave of absence? I stood up. If I leave now, it confirms everything he's saying. It admits guilt. I built this code. I built this infrastructure. You cannot sideline me. We can, Robert said quietly. Or we can vote to remove you. I stared at them. This was my baby. My life's work. And Marcus was effectively killing it to strip it for parts. Give me 1 month, I said. 1 month to prove that the company is stable and that these allegations are false. If I fail, I'll resign. I'll walk away. Robert exchanged glances with the others. 1 month, he said. But you're on a short leash, Elena. I walked out of that meeting vibrating with anger. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. Pale. They want you to break, I told my reflection. They want you to scream, to drink, to fall apart so they can point and say, see? She's crazy. I dried my face. Not today. I went back to my desk. I didn't cry. I worked. I coded for 14 hours straight. I fixed the bugs in the logistics API that had been plaguing us for weeks, bugs that Marcus had told the board were unfixable. I sent the update at 3 a.m. Then, I opened a new browser window. It was time for the counterattack. Vance had sent me a message earlier, he's getting desperate. The freeze order stopped his big transfer, but he's looking for loopholes. He's asking Chloe if she knows any offshore accounts you might have hidden. He was projecting. He thought because he was a thief, I must be one too. You want hidden treasure, Marcus? I whispered to the empty office. I'll give you a treasure map. The plan was dangerous. Sarah advised against it. Vance thought it was brilliant but risky. Entrapment is tricky, Sarah warned me. If we induce him to commit a crime he wasn't going to commit, it won't hold up. I'm not inducing him, I said. I'm just leaving a door unlocked. If he chooses to walk in and rob the house, that's on him. I created a digital ghost. Using my old developer tools, I built a fake banking portal. It looked exactly like the interface for a private wealth bank in Nevis, a notorious tax haven. I populated it with fake data showing a balance of $5 million in a legacy trust under my grandmother's maiden name. Then, I wrote the login credentials on a yellow sticky note. Nevis legacy user, E_Martinez_trust/pass, Abuela 1955. I stuck the note inside the cover of my old physical datebook, the one I kept in the safe at home. Marcus knew the combination to the safe. He claimed he forgot it, but Vance's keylogger showed Marcus had searched safecracking digital keypads weeks ago. But he wouldn't need to crack it. I was going to leave it slightly ajar, just a millimeter, as if I had been careless in my stress. The next day, I went to the house to pack some winter clothes. Marcus was there, as I knew he would be. He was sitting on the couch, drinking my wine, watching TV. Here to beg, he sneered without looking up. Just getting my coat, I said, keeping my voice meek. It's cold in the rental apartment. I went to the study. I opened the safe loudly enough for him to hear the beep. I shuffled some papers. I made sure the datebook with the yellow sticky note sticking out was visible. Then I accidentally dropped a file folder. Everything okay in there? Marcus called out, his voice laced with suspicion. Fine. I yelled back, sounding flustered. I quickly shoved the papers back in, closed the safe door but didn't spin the lock fully, and grabbed my coat. I walked out past him. I looked guilty. I looked like I was hiding something. You're acting weird, Marcus said, standing up. I'm just in a hurry, I said, clutching my purse. I have a meeting. I left. I sat in my car around the corner and called Vance. The bait is in the water, I said. Monitor his laptop. Copy that, Vance said. I'm watching his screen in real time. For 3 hours, nothing happened. I sat in my car, eating a cold sandwich, wondering if I had overplayed my hand. Maybe Marcus wasn't that stupid. Maybe he would suspect a trap. Then, at 8:45 p.m., Vance's voice came over the speakerphone. He's moving. He just opened the safe. My heart hammered. He's taking photos of the documents, Vance narrated. He found the datebook. He found the sticky note. I held my breath. He's going to his laptop, Vance said. He's opening a Tor browser. Smart, but not smart enough. He's typing in the Nevis URL you built. Is he logging in? He's entering the username. E_Martinez_trust. Password entered. He's in, I whispered. He's looking at the balance, Vance said, sounding amused. $5 million. I can see his face through the webcam, Elena. His eyes just popped out of his head. He thinks he hit the jackpot. Wait for it, I said. Wait for the transfer. He's navigating to the transfer page, Vance said. He's trying to move the funds, he's entering his shell company account number. Chloe's consulting, he's trying to drain the whole $5 million. Let him hit send, I said. We need the attempt. He's hesitating, Vance said. He's calling someone. Chloe, probably. Silence for 2 minutes. Okay, he hung up. He's smiling. He's clicking confirm transfer. Got him, Vance said. The fake portal just gave him a processing message. I have the screen recording, the keystrokes, and the webcam footage of him doing it. We have him for attempted grand larceny, computer fraud, and violating a court order. I leaned back in my car seat. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears of relief. He had just tried to steal $5 million that didn't exist. He had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he was a predator. Send the file to Sarah, I said. And Vance? Yeah? Save that video of his face when he saw the balance. I might want to frame it one day. 3 weeks later. The final hearing. This was it. The culmination of the smear campaign, the financial freezing, the sleepless nights. Marcus walked into the courtroom like he owned the building. Sterling, his lawyer, was practically strutting. They had no idea about the evidence we had gathered. Sarah had filed our exhibit list under seal, claiming proprietary business information, so they hadn't seen the packet yet. They thought they were walking into a slaughter. And they were right. They just didn't know who the pig was. The first 2 hours were grueling. Sterling painted me as a monster. Mrs. Blackwood was absent, Sterling told the judge. She was emotionally unavailable. She was obsessed with her code, leaving my client, Mr. Blackwood, to manage the entire household, the finances, and the emotional labor of the marriage. He was not just a husband, he was an unpaid employee. I sat there, stoic. I had practiced my court face in the mirror for days. No emotion. No outbursts. Then, they called their star witness. Chloe. She walked to the stand, looking demure in a pastel cardigan. She refused to look at me. Ms. Miller, Sterling asked. Describe the working conditions at Lumina Tech under Elena Blackwood. It was chaotic, Chloe said, her voice trembling for effect. Elena was rarely there mentally. She would lock herself in her office for days. Marcus, Mr. Blackwood, was the one we went to for decisions. He approved the budgets. He calmed the investors. He was the real leader. And did Mrs. Blackwood ever discuss her finances with you? Yes, Chloe lied. She told me she was hiding money. She said she didn't want Marcus to have a dime because she owned him. It was a beautiful performance. If I didn't know the truth, I would have hated me too. Then it was Sarah's turn to cross-examine. Sarah stood up slowly. She adjusted her blazer. Ms. Miller, Sarah said pleasantly. You say Mr. Blackwood was the real leader of Lumina Tech? Yes. Does Mr. Blackwood know how to code in Python? I don't know. Does he know the difference between a server-side API and a client-side interface? He managed the strategy, Chloe said defensively. Strategy, Sarah repeated. Interesting. You also stated that Elena told you she was hiding money. When did this conversation take place? In October. Before the filing. October, Sarah nodded. Was this before or after you and Mr. Blackwood exchanged 240 text messages in a single week? Chloe froze. We were colleagues. Colleagues who discuss running away to Tulum? Sarah asked, holding up a printout of the text logs. Objection. Sterling shouted. Relevance. It goes to the witness's credibility and bias, Your Honor, Sarah said calmly. Overruled, Judge Harrison said, looking at Chloe over his glasses. We were just venting, Chloe stammered. Venting, Sarah said. Is venting also why you are listed as the registered agent for an LLC that received monthly payments from the Blackwood joint account? Chloe's face went pale. She looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the table. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered. No further questions, Sarah said. We had chipped the armor. But we hadn't killed the beast yet. That would come when Marcus took the stand. When Marcus took the stand, the atmosphere in the room changed. He exuded charisma. He smiled at the court reporter. He nodded respectfully at the judge. He was playing the role of the good man wronged. Sterling walked him through the softball questions. Marcus, tell us about your contribution to the grandmother's estate. Elena loved that house, Marcus said softly. But she didn't know how to maintain it. It was falling apart. I managed the contractors. I oversaw the renovation. I increased the property value by at least $2 million. It was a labor of love. A labor of love paid for with my money, using contractors who overcharged us because, as Vance discovered, Marcus was getting kickbacks from them. And Lumina Tech? Sterling asked. Marcus sighed, looking pained. Look, Elena is a great coder. But she's not a CEO. She panicked during the Series B funding. She wanted to sell early for pennies. I convinced her to hold out. I structured the deal. I brought in the key investors from my network on Wall Street. Without me, Lumina would be a defunct app on the App Store. So you believe you are entitled to 50%? I believe I earned it, Marcus said firmly. Marriage is a partnership. I put my career on hold to build hers. I just want what is fair. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Sarah stood up. This was it. The kill shot. Mr. Blackwood, Sarah began. You claim you managed the finances because Elena was incapable? She was uninterested, Marcus corrected. And yes, incapable of the complex structuring required. Complex structuring, Sarah repeated. Is that why you opened 3 shell companies in Nevada and Wyoming? Marcus didn't flinch. He was ready for this. Those were for tax efficiency. Standard wealth management strategies. I see. And the payments to Chloe's consulting? Was that tax efficiency? Consulting fees, Marcus said smoothly. Ms. Miller did additional work for the estate outside of her Lumina duties. Work that was worth $10,000 a month? Good help is hard to find, Marcus quipped. A few people in the gallery chuckled. He thought he was winning. Mr. Blackwood, Sarah walked to our table and picked up a document. Do you recognize the entity Nevis Legacy Trust? Marcus stiffened. Just slightly. A twitch in his jaw. I've seen the name. You logged into a banking portal for this trust 3 weeks ago, didn't you? I was auditing our assets, Marcus said quickly. As I said, I manage the finances. I found a note with the login and checked it. And did you try to transfer $5 million from that trust to your personal shell company? Absolutely not, Marcus lied. I just looked. You just looked? Yes. Sarah turned to me. She nodded. It was time for the envelope. Your Honor, I said, standing up as Sarah sat down. I have one final piece of evidence to submit. The packet regarding Mr. Blackwood's financial management. I walked to the bench. My heels clicked on the linoleum floor. The sound was rhythmic, like a drumbeat. I handed the thick yellow envelope to Judge Harrison. Mr. Blackwood claims he is a financial genius, I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room. He claims he just looked at the Nevis account. This envelope contains the forensic log of his keystrokes, the screen recording of him clicking transfer all, and the registration documents for the shell company he tried to send the money to. Marcus stood up. Objection. This is hacking. Invasion of privacy. Sit down, Mr. Blackwood, Judge Harrison barked. The judge opened the envelope. He pulled out the first page. It was the screenshot of the fake bank portal. He pulled out the second page. The log showing the transfer attempt. Then he pulled out the third page. Mr. Blackwood, Judge Harrison said, his voice straining. You set up a shell company to receive these stolen funds. You registered it in Wyoming. It's a legitimate holding company. Marcus shouted, losing his cool. A legitimate holding company, the judge repeated. He looked at the paper. Then he looked at Marcus. Named Chloe's Fluffy Poodle Consulting LLC? The silence in the courtroom was absolute for one heartbeat. Then, Judge Harrison snorted. It started as a wheeze. Then a chuckle. Then, the judge, a man with 30 years on the bench, covered his face with his hand and laughed. A deep, belly-shaking laugh. You. The judge gasped for air, waving the paper. You are asking this court to believe you are a titan of industry, and you name your money-laundering vehicle Chloe's Fluffy Poodle? The gallery erupted. People were laughing. The bailiff was trying to hide a smile. Even the court reporter stopped typing to cover her mouth. Marcus turned purple. It was a placeholder name. It doesn't matter. It matters, Judge Harrison said, suddenly slamming his hand down. The laughter vanished instantly, replaced by a terrifying anger. Because it shows exactly how much respect you have for this court, for your wife, and for the law. You thought this was a game. You thought you were so smart, and she was so stupid, that you could mock her while robbing her. The judge picked up the packet. This document proves you attempted to steal $5 million, money you thought was real, in direct violation of my freezing order. That is contempt of court. That is attempted grand theft. He looked at the bailiff. Take him into custody. What? Marcus stepped back, knocking his chair over. No. You can't. I'm the plaintiff. You're a criminal, Judge Harrison said. And Ms. Miller? I see you in the gallery. Don't leave. The officers will want to speak to you about your role in Fluffy Poodle Consulting. 2 bailiffs moved in on Marcus. He looked at me, wild-eyed. Elena. Tell them. It was a misunderstanding. We're married. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had slept in my bed, eaten my food, and plotted my destruction. We were married, I said calmly. Now? You're just a bad investment I'm writing off. The bailiff clicked the handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. The metallic snick was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The fallout was swift and brutal. Marcus wasn't just arrested, he was humiliated. The story of Chloe's Fluffy Poodle went viral. The financial genius who named his crime vehicle after a dog became a meme overnight. Because of the attempted theft and the undeniable proof of fraud, the prenup, which he had tried to argue was invalid, was not only upheld, but the judge invoked a penalty clause for breach of fiduciary duty. Marcus didn't get half. He got 0. Actually, he got less than 0. He was ordered to pay back the $2.3 million he had already siphoned off, plus my legal fees. Since he had spent most of it on the Porsche, the watches, and the lifestyle, he was forced to declare bankruptcy. The criminal trial followed 3 months later. With Vance's digital evidence, it was an open-and-shut case. Marcus pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering in exchange for a lighter sentence. He got 4 years in federal prison. Chloe turned state's evidence against him to save herself. She admitted everything: the plot, the texts, the fake mental instability narrative. She avoided jail time, but her reputation was incinerated. In Silicon Valley, trust is currency. She was bankrupt. I went to see Marcus one last time before he was transferred to Lompoc. He sat behind the glass partition, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with his complexion. He looked older. Smaller. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a pathetic desperation. "Elena," he said through the phone. "I'm sorry. I got lost. I can fix this. When I get out, we can talk." "There's nothing to talk about, Marcus," I said. "I made you," he hissed, a flash of the old anger returning. "You were nothing before me." "I was a CEO," I corrected him. "You were a parasite." "A parasite thinks it's the host, but when you remove it, the host gets healthier. And the parasite dies." I hung up the phone. I stood up and walked out of the visiting room. I walked out into the sunshine. The air smelled like eucalyptus and freedom. Life after Marcus was surprisingly quiet. The silence in the house wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I didn't sell Lumina Tech. I doubled down. We launched the 2.0 version of our platform 6 months later. It was a massive success. The stock price didn't just recover, it soared. But this time I didn't hide in the code. I started doing interviews. I told my story. Not the technical story, but the human one. I spoke about financial abuse. I spoke about the imposter syndrome that makes smart women hand over their power to mediocre men who claim to know better. I renamed the company Holding Group. It's no longer just Lumina. It's Phoenix Ventures. And I did one more thing. I set up a scholarship fund for young female coders from low-income backgrounds. The criteria? They have to take a mandatory course on financial literacy and business law. I want to make sure the next generation of Elenas knows how to read a balance sheet as well as they read Python. I ran into Sarah for lunch last week. She was beaming. "You know," she said, sipping her wine, "I still tell the story of the fluffy poodle to my junior associates. It's legendary." "It was an expensive lesson," I smiled. "But you got a good return on investment," she pointed out. "You got your life back." "Yeah," I said, looking out at the San Francisco Bay. "I did." Looking back, I realized that the envelope I handed the judge wasn't just paper. It was my dignity. It was my voice. For 3 years, I let a man tell me I was just a coder, just a lucky girl who needed a big strong man to handle the scary numbers. I let him convince me that my kindness was weakness and his arrogance was competence. But in the end, it wasn't his Wall Street connections or his expensive suits that decided our fate. It was my code. It was my attention to detail. It was the very nerdy skills he mocked that built the trap he walked right into. So, to anyone listening who feels like they are being made small by someone in their life, check your accounts. Trust your gut. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you aren't the CEO of your own life. If they try to take half of your millions, make sure you have an envelope ready. And if you're lucky, you might just make the judge laugh. This is Elena, signing off. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Stay sharp, everyone.